The lion banner sways and falls in the horror-haunted gloom. A scarlet dragon rustles by, borne on winds of doom. In heaps the shining horsemen lie, where the thrusting lances break, and deep in the haunted mountains the lost black gods awake. Dead hands grope in the shadows, the stars turn pale with fright, for this is the dragon's hour, the triumph of fear and night.
Let's see if this works now. Let's see. All right. Sorry about that. Technical difficulties have been haunting me for a few minutes.
Well, you also had the little tribute to Howard there as we mixed up our literary giants just in honor of the occasion.
Yeah, because Howard Days just passed by, which is supposed to honor the only Titan worthy of being called, well, or compared with Tolkien, really. Now, if I could just get the PDF up, because this, here we are. Bear in mind, my connection, my Wi-Fi is terribly unstable, so.
Okay, fair enough. We'll monitor as accordingly.
Yeah, but yeah, I'm quite fond of Howard Day since I discovered it. But I think I'm the only, me and one other guy, Michael Vaughn, are the only two real Conan tubers who actually like to kind of honor Howard Days. To my knowledge, at least. There might be some that do.
It's a worthy topic for honoring, for sure.
Yeah. And the little verse there is Hour of the Dragon, Howard's Lord of the Rings. Anyways, I might just stay off camera only because I'm trying.
Because you're worried for the video power bandwidth consumption. But yeah, so I'll launch in if you want. Today we are talking about the third chapter of Book 2 of the Fellowship of the Ring, entitled "The Ring Goes South."
South, just like this quest does.
That's right. Quick summary. Book terms: we've just finished the Council of Elrond, which takes place on October 25th. Our heroes then spend 2 months at Rivendell, waiting for the scouts to get the lay of the land. Also because I think Tolkien really wanted them to leave on Christmas Day. In the meantime, the 9 members of the Fellowship are chosen. Bilbo gives Frodo Sting and his mithril shirt, which he advises Frodo to wear in secret. The Fellowship indeed sets off on December 25th, intending to cross the Misty Mountains over the Pass of Caradhras. But the mountain is not cooperative, the snows are too thick, so the Fellowship is forced to retreat and consider other options. Spoiler alert, that's going to be Moria. Woohoo! Awesome. All right. With that short summary out of the way, Joe, feel free to take us through in more detail, good sir.
All right. Okay. Our connection is stabilized, so I can now go camera on. And there she's going again. Anyways, would the Vale of Anduin have been a better route here? I'll just put this on the screen. Shoot.
Oh, right. I hear you, Robert. Like, in other words, why didn't they just cross the mountains there at Rivendell and then take the east side of the mountains? I thought about that too as I was rereading this last go round.
Same.
And I think the answer has to do with the scouts and maybe that they were worried they'd be more visible to the east of the mountains than staying to the west for as long as possible. Yes, Robert. I think more spies. I think that's the idea. They went off road and they tried to hug the mountains. So I'm guessing that's the reason. But you're right. I mean, you're like, well, we can't cross these mountains. Oh, well, there was a way you could have crossed before you left, but okay. Yeah. So I think that's it. They were. Oh, right. There is no mention of Fredegar Bolger for some reason. It's in the this particular annotated version. Originally, obviously, Fredegar led them to Carithros, and he got over Carithros, and it was actually a really simple quest. They finished the next chapter, but Tolkien decided, let's make this a little longer. Let's make it a trilogy. So
Darn him.
He deep sixed Fredegar Bolger.
Howard would have included Fatty. He would have included. Right. I'm joking. I'm joking. I couldn't resist that. Darn Englishman not including the greatest hero of the entire story. I'm joking.
Correct.
Anyways, the first part I'm going to draw attention to is just Pippin offering cheek over Sam. It's most unfair, said Pippin. Instead of throwing him out and clapping him in chains, Elrond goes and rewards him for his cheek. And this is in reference to Sam having crept into the council and been selected as Frodo's companion. I just thought this was hilarious that Gandalf's Bane would, kind of say that. So, because Pippin knows all about cheek, and he's always mouthing off, and he's the punk of the group.
Right. He's like, I should have been the one to be rewarded for that, not you.
Because every time he does that, something goes wrong or he's punished. But Sam does it once and he's rewarded.
Well, it's because when Sam does it, it always turns out right.
Well, there is also that point of, I forget is it Gandalf that points it out and be like, well, it's not really a reward. Like you're going on essentially a suicide mission, but yes, you're right. You accomplished your goal.
And of course, you have Frodo reminds him this is actually a punishment. It's not a reward. Which Frodo has the right of it. If this is a reward, I don't want to see a punishment personally. Right. And I say that because this quest it is a terrible thing to, undertake. This is one that is rife with danger and terror all around. Like, okay, I'll reference Howard just very briefly, just with his Hour of the Dragon. In there's basically the same quest, but Conan undertakes it pretty much alone. And in order not to risk anyone else. But he very nearly encounters death like 5-6 times, on top of terrors, which are astonishing that he didn't just lose his mind to in a Lovecraftian manner. And he actually, for a moment, did lose a bit of his mind. And it's one of those things where if, one of the greatest top 2 or 3 greatest warriors and heroes of entire genre basically lost his wits from fear, you don't want to imagine, like a couple of hobbits and halflings going off on this sort of quest. It's unthinkable, and yet it's going to be done. And that's one of the most remarkable things in this story.
Well, so and Gandalf brings up, a compelling argument to say, yes, we could have packed the Fellowship with Glorfindel and that ilk, but there is an equally important quality to the people that are going to be involved in this Fellowship to be, closely allied, to be loyal, to be friends, to be support to the ring bearer, and so that quality of having friends in this common task with you is an important thing. I think he's thinking of the psyche of Frodo, the psyche of the ring bearer, to keep them able to resist the ring and such, and continue this task with a Pippin, with a Merry, with a Sam, as opposed to necessarily having a Glorfindel, who's probably just going to get you attract a whole bunch of attention anyway. And so that was I think that's the reasoning.
Yeah, and it's a very sound reason. And of course, you have Gandalf, who there's that meme, he wishes he brought more hobbits. So that might be the reason.
Yeah, maybe it's we're going to balance it. Well, that's it. That's an interesting thing too. Is I think when the first few times, let's say I read Lord of the Rings, and then I reflected on it. I'm 12 years old reading the Lord of the Rings.
Mm-hmm.
You get the feeling like the Fellowship of the Ring. You get this idea that the Fellowship was supposed to accompany Frodo all the way to Mordor and help him, destroy the ring.
Yeah.
And so, and just by a terrible set of circumstances, the Fellowship broke up. But in actuality, the Fellowship was never intended to go all the way to Mordor. We get a line. Let's see where that one is. Okay.
Aragorn was supposed to deviate and go
Correct.
Go for
Correct.
Gondor.
So you get this. Legolas shall be for the elves. Gimli, son of Glóin, for the dwarves. They're willing to go at least to the passes of the mountains and maybe beyond. So there's that. First of all, Legolas and Gimli are only going to take them basically as far as they get this chapter. For men, you shall have Aragorn, son of Arathorn, for the ring of Isildur concerns him closely. Strider, cried Frodo. Yes, he said with a smile. I ask leave once again to be your companion, Frodo. I would have begged you to come, said Frodo, only I thought you were going to Minas Tirith with Boromir. I am, said Aragorn, and the sword that was broken shall be reforged ere I set out to war. But your road and our road lie together for many hundreds of miles. Therefore, Boromir will also be in the company. He is a valiant man. So this Fellowship is really only designed to go to Moria, essentially. We'll get you to the mountains. We'll maybe get you across the mountains, and then have at it. And I think that's where our four hobbits are supposed to just, find their way the rest of the way. Which, anyway, it's an interesting thing because you think of it just in terms of like, there's an entire chapter, or entire book, The Fellowship of the Ring. This Fellowship must be really crucial to the, destroying the ring. But actually, it was always intended to be like, well, you're on the way. We'll walk with you. And then, I guess Gandalf, perhaps, we'll get the idea that Gandalf was going to stay with them, perhaps, if he hadn't perished. Mm-hmm. But yeah, for Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, and Boromir, they were like, we're in it, till the next stop, essentially. So kind of interesting little thing. You think back on it, like, oh, right, okay, this Fellowship wasn't supposed to be a 3-book thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a bus. Everybody's getting off at a different stop.
Yep.
But naturally, where Pippin's excited, this is a detail you don't see in the Jackson movies. And of course, I'm going to be mean-spirited and just be a total jerk about Jackson. And the thing is, Merry in his movies and Pippin, as Lexius pointed out, may as well just be a blob that, it's the same character. There's no... Clearly, he didn't understand it. Clearly, he didn't understand everything. Merry is the grizzled, seasoned hobbit. So he's the perceptive one.
Yeah.
So it's really a gross injustice that was done to Merry in those trash movies.
You're killing me again with it. Okay, but yes, I get you. There were certainly some characters that did not fare so well in the movie versions. Faramir comes immediately to mind, but there's a bunch. But yes, Merry definitely gets turned into
Merry, Gimli, and Faramir did not fare so well.
Yeah.
Not
Faramir so well. Sorry. But yeah, yes.
Fared well. Eowyn and Theoden fared very well, I would argue. They fared so well.
And you got Sean Bean as Boromir, Captain Quote. So I'm like, he did Boromir proud.
Sean Bean excels in everything he does, and the trouble is he over-excelled so that, he should have been Aragorn. I will go to my grave saying that over and over and over again.
Fair enough. Fair
Um,
enough.
but
I'm in
even-
on Vigo. I'm fine with Vigo. Vigo did a great job, but I hear you. I hear you. To each
Yeah.
their own.
Well,
Everybody's got. You know.
yeah, Vigo would have been perfect as Boromir. But Vigo's a great actor, I will admit. Now, apparently, Aragorn had left with some of Elrond, well, with Elrond's two sons, and I believe they did the scouting, and
There were some of the scouts. Yeah, that's actually a very
Yeah.
important bit of text. But go ahead.
yeah, because Aragorn's basically the greatest scout in the world. And you have,
But
of
their
course, the
mission
lovely.
is very important. Like we get this somewhat cryptic line that says the sons of Elrond, Elladan and Elrahir, were the last to return. They made a great journey, passing down the Silver Lode into a strange country, but of their errand they would not speak to any save to Elrond. I feel fairly confident that what they're talking about there is not just, hey, we did some reconnaissance and we got stuff to tell Elrond, because everybody that's coming back is giving reconnaissance. It's the fact down to Silver Lode to a strange country. They definitely went to Lothlorien, and we've got this scenario that's in this part where Aragorn has I don't think it comes out and says it, but in the timeline of things, he essentially is now engaged to Arwen. And so Elladan and Elrahir are going to Lothlorien and then coming back to talk to Elrond. It's basically, I think they are conveying the fact they're getting the permission basically from, because they can't get permission from Arwen's mom, because Celebrian went to the west after some very tragic events happened. And so instead of the mom, they're getting it from the grandma. That's Galadriel. And so they get approval for this match from Galadriel. And then obviously later, not that much later, a few chapters from now, when the remaining parts of the Fellowship go to Lothlorien and they leave, and Galadriel gives gifts. One of the gifts that she gives to Aragorn is the Elf Stone, which he wears from then on, and that is essentially a wedding present. It has a long history, and that history is intertwined up with Arwen and Celebrian, and now it's so yes. So I think that whole Elladan Elrahir's special side mission was to basically talk about the union between Aragorn and Arwen.
It's very feasible. It's very likely. Bilbo, as we all know, passes on the mithril cuirass, as you rightly put it earlier. I really like this art piece. And we also get the poem, when winter first begins to bite and stones crack in the frosty night, when pools are black and trees are bare, 'tis evil in the wild to fare. I really like that.
This Bilbo has another poem later in this chapter that it's actually, I don't know, it's fairly dark. It's fairly I won't say depressing, or it's like almost like a meditation on death, essentially. Which anyway, it's just kind of considering a lot of his stuff seems to be there and back again-ish. This one's like, ooh, okay.
Yeah, there's something there. I've got a theory about it, but I want to say it after we get to the poem.
Okay.
But it's I don't know if it's a theory but it's just an obvious thing I think many have noticed. So I want to mention that after we get to that.
I don't have an opinion other than I just noticed that it was like, wow, he's contemplating his own demise.
Yeah, there is that, but there's I'm of two minds on it, and I think it's Tolkien saying two things with it.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll hold it for now. Okay, I got you.
Yeah. Bilbo tries to cheer Frodo up, and Frodo's kind of got mixed feelings because he's asked about whether he'd read a book and how he thinks it would end. And Frodo says, yeah, I've got several endings, and they're all dark and unpleasant. Bilbo, oh, come on. Books ought to be good endings. And here it's a little funny because Tolkien basically just spoilers the entire ending. And they all settled down and lived together happily ever after. He just spoiled the whole thing. But
it's
doing there.
It's optimistic. He's like, hey, maybe this could work out.
Yeah, he's showing Bilbo's a optimist, of course, as we saw in The Hobbit. But what he's also doing is this really remarkable thing where he's spoiling the entire ending. This is how it's going to end. But what he's kind of, I think, subtly conveying to the reader, and he probably would have said outright to his kids, is, and I think he did say in a few letters, it's not the end so much as the journey. And this has always been the idea of Lord of the Rings and even Hour of the Dragon. It's not the end so much as the journey. Like, even when you read the Silmarillion, Tolkien's greatest work, at various points he says, and it would happen that this was an omen of things yet to come for him, or something to that effect. You know what I mean? Like saying outright, yeah, this ain't going to end well. So you, the reader, are going, well, okay, well, I know that's a bit of a spoiler, but you keep reading because it's the journey. You're not there just for the ending. You're there to see what happens along the road.
Well, there's also that notion of, do these stories ever have an end? The road goes ever on and on. The idea that the story never ends. So wherever you want to cut off, maybe if you want to end it at a part where it's happy, great. Hey, it had a happy ending. If you wait a little while, you might find an ending that's not so great.
Sure.
But it's
only a great author like Tolkien could keep you glued to the page for the ending, and for the entirety of the journey. It takes a lot of skill to do what he did. I'll just quickly put Mr. Duvant on the screen. Does anyone have a timeline of the travel between Rivendell and Lorien? I don't have the books in front of me. Was it possible to make that trip in 1 month as the Sons of Elrond did twice?
I think it
is possible.
I think it is possible. It takes them they say a fortnight essentially to get to Carithus, which they make pretty good time. But Carithus is about, I think it's like 150 to 200 miles away from Rivendell. Then you basically got to cross. Hello. I think I'm hearing myself. Technical difficulties here, folks. Try muting on your end, sir. Okay. All right. We'll let them sort out their issues there. So it's about 150 miles from Rivendell to Carithus, even like to Moria-ish, essentially. So you go to get across the mountains, assuming you could get, let's say you could cross Carithus. You're talking maybe twice that amount of time. So yeah, I think a month would be possible.
We're back. And we have the combination.
It's exactly. I hear voices on the wind. It's Saruman. Joe also asked a question. Sam, and where will they live? That's what I often wonder. Seems like a strange thing for Sam to say. What is he thinking?
He's, I think, being a little gloomy himself. But he's also, I think, pondering. Like, you got to bear in mind, Pippin, Merry, and Frodo are all heirs to well-to-do families. Sam is basically, so he's fancying Rosie, but he doesn't have any prospects.
Well, and yeah, I think he's also, because the idea, as Joe points out here, is that it's a response to they all settled down and lived happily forever after. I think he's specifically saying okay, sure, maybe we all live happily ever after, hopefully in this thing, but do we get to stay in the Shire? Is the Shire still a thing? Do we get evacuated? Do we have to be exiled
That's
to some,
what I'm thinking as well.
Yeah, place that
I think it's
I
few
wouldn't call
ones.
home otherwise? I think that's kind of where it comes from.
Yeah, I think it's both things all at once. Because
Yeah, like it's not a happy ending unless I actually get to stay in the Shire. I think is
exactly.
Yeah,
that's precisely it. But I also think, like I said, there's also once back in the Shire, if I want a wife, can I, like gardener, is that respectable enough and whatnot? This is often a concern for men in love and men who are married and whatnot, because you have to support your bride. Foreshadowing by Tolkien, in my view. Yes. It's Sauron.
he was talking about the audio issues.
That call. Yeah, it's because I thought, to flick off on the camera, but it completely, it smashed
Didn't
everything.
cooperate.
No, positive. So yeah, we are now at page 274 in my notes. They passed 2 months, as we've said, in Rivendell, partying it up, going to the local clubs and whatnot. I couldn't resist that joke. But then we get to 275, where we actually get some interesting an interesting revelation, which is 8 out of the 9 ring wraiths are accounted for. And Gandalf points out that the ring wraiths have been scattered and likely have to return to Mordor, which does buy the Fellowship some time, because the last thing you want to do is encounter a ring wraith on the road. Even altogether, the group would be hard pressed to keep up in combat, and they might lose a few men. As to the one who's not had to scatter and go back to Mordor, how much you want to bet it's the Witch King?
Just to be Morgoth's advocate, I think there's a case to be made that if let's say I'm on the Council of Elrond. All right, hey everybody, we've decided it. Oh, that's those are the 2 sons, Eladon and Elrohir, by the way. And then that's
they look great.
Yeah. So if I'm on the council and they're like, okay, guys, look, we've decided it. We have to destroy the ring. And then somebody else said, we're going to send out scouts and we're going to take 2 months to get the lay of the land and hear back from our various allies. I would have said, why wait? We know for a fact that we just wiped out, for some amount of time, the physical forms of several Black Riders. Mm-hmm. We know that it's not going to take them long. It's going to take them a few weeks, maybe a month or so to reform. We'll strike while the iron's hot. Also, if we want to end up crossing the mountains, much better to do it in October than in late December, January. So I would have perhaps recommended move, go. But I get it. That there's pros and cons to different strategies.
Actually, I'm going to agree with your strategic thinking and say it's actually fairly idiotic to wait 2 months and to cross in December. And some of the shortcoming I'm going to lay at Tolkien's door, because England doesn't get very hard winters. So the trouble is the kind of winter that would probably take place in this world of Middle-earth would be something more that you might see in Norway or Canada. And I don't mean South Canada, like those 2 filthy twin cities, but I mean in Southern Ontario, I mean like Northern Canada where Dan and I are. So minus 25 to minus 40 weather.
You would know, yes.
Yeah. And so it's like, okay, well, we're going to undertake a quest, let's say to BC. I don't think it's the same kind of distance, but I would never think to go on foot in December 25th. I'd either wait for spring or I'd leave in October.
Well, for instance, even Tolkien, his one experience, I'll say his one experience, the main experience that we hear about that inspired his vision of the Misty Mountains was a hiking trip to Switzerland, but he did it in the summer. So he did a hiking trip through the mountains. We're like, oh my gosh, these mountains look amazing. This would be a great setting for a fantastic world. But he was doing it in the summer and not perhaps realizing that.
Even in the winter, Switzerland's not that bad. I know I've never been there, but whenever I look up their temperatures, because it's a hobby, I'm always struck by how it is even in winter. So I just tend to think, yeah, even if you went there in winter, it wouldn't be so bad. While I guess Canada's kind of Scandinavian adjacent. We would just tell you, no, you're not making this trip. This makes Elrond and Gandalf look like brain dead imbeciles. Because
I'm sure that,
who would counsel this?
With their internal logic, it probably has some kind of, it makes obviously everything worked out. But yes, it does seem on the face of it. I was like, but also because they leave on Christmas Day, you do feel like Tolkien was kind of massaging the dates a little bit to be like, okay, we're kind of near to Christmas. Why don't I just say they left on Christmas? And so
I
he
would
maybe
prefer
carved a reason
to make Christmas. I would prefer that they arrive maybe near Mordor on Christmas, so that's a miserable Christmas, so that you feel even sorrier for Sam and Frodo, for example. But that's just me.
I got you. Yeah, Eric says, I feel like could have scouted near Isengard and High Pass just to see if Saruman or the Moria orcs mobilized. Yep.
Yeah. Now this is something I'll actually. Okay, I'm going to go up and start commenting on the comments, but I'll actually compliment Jackson. I think he has them just leave immediately, which Jackson had some sound thinking on that one. Yeah, I know he's compressing the story and whatnot for a movie, but this is a case where he obviously made the correct decision to have them leave as soon as possible. The Canadian Rockies would be a good analogy. Oh yeah, fair point. We're basically along the same latitude or whatever, I think, as that. So that even though we're further east. So, but that's a very good point. That's a very good point. Robert, thank you so much for making that point. Feel like you could have just scouted near Isengard and High Pass just to see if Saruman and the Moria orcs mobilized. Oh, that's a fair point. That's a good point.
Yeah, your scouting doesn't have to go, even as they point out multiple times in this chapter, they're like, let's not think too far ahead. I think Elrond says that. I think Gandalf says that. Like, let's just get point after point. So do you really need to go east of the mountains and go, see if Radagast is home or not? You probably don't. You probably are like, by the time that matters, we'll have gone, so much will have transpired that let's play our hand that we have here for the next couple of weeks.
Well, now we get to the fun part. Basically, Elrond declaring that the company of the ring shall be 9. Not 8, not 10, but 9. I'm joking. I couldn't resist that Monty Python.
3 shall be the number of thy counting, and the number of thy counting shall be 3.
Not 2.
5 is right out. Yeah.
Yeah, 5 is right out. 3. Oh man, I love that joke. But okay, I'm just going to skip ahead to 276 and 277 just for one thing, because I really love the reforging of the sword of Elendil. I love this.
There's an artwork for that. If you go to slide 5.
Slide 5. Here it is. Oh my gosh, this brings to mind Sigarther and Reagan when they're reforging Graham.
Yeah.
Ooh. Oh, thank you. It's just the Norse myths. I want to continue
There's
making videos.
obviously in here for sure.
Mm,
Tolkien definitely weaved them in here.
yeah, I love the symbology there. And yeah, you have okay. Obviously, the blade has inscribed in it 7 stars set between the crescent moon and the rayed sun, and there's many runes attached. I don't know if those are just to look pretty or to be magical, but the sword, though, is apparently very bright, and is described as the light of the sun shone redly in it, and the light of the moon shone cold, and its edge was hard and keen. And Aragorn gave it a new name and called it Anduril, Flame of the West.
Yeah,
Anduril sounds way better than Narsil.
It does.
I
have a
like
ring.
Narsil. Don't get me wrong, but I
ring.
really like Anduril. There's something regal and majestic about it.
I got you. Great point, Robert. The Ring of the Nibelung. Wagner also had a sword being remade. So the runes, the inscriptions on the sword, obviously play into Gondor. In fact, you've got the moon, which would be Isildur, Minas Ithil, Tower of the Moon. The stars are going to be obviously the stars off of their banner, but that represents the Valasirka, the Big Dipper, but also represents Osgiliath, Vault of the Stars. And then the sun is Minas Anor, Tower of the Sun, and that's Anarion. So it's a reference back to Isildur, Anarion, and Osgiliath, and those cities that made up the backbone of Gondor.
And we have also we get a reference to Beren and Luthien, of course, which is pretty awesome. I just love that we get that little reference. And that's because the hobbits sit together in the evening in the Hall of Fire and are told the story of the ancient lovers who won the Great Jewel. And I wonder who sang that. Can't have been Aragorn. I wonder if it was Elrond or Bilbo. It strikes me as something more Bilbo would do.
I think you're right. I think if one were to theorize, Bilbo would be a good candidate.
Elrond's basically teasing him right after. I'm just saying.
There's a bit of teasing that goes on generally this section.
Yeah, it's just Elrond's the master roaster. He's how do I put it? He seems to have a personality more like Obi-Wan Kenobi than I don't know, the character in the movie, like who's just doesn't seem to like anyone.
Curmudgeon.
Yeah, it's just too much of a curmudgeon. Obi-Wan can be, but in episode 1 and 3, he has these great roasts that he throws out there, and he's just funny. And I just like Elrond's roasting of Bilbo. I just really like it. It's charming. And of course, as you pointed out, we get, let me just go back up, Bilbo giving his chainmail of Mithril and Sting, which, oh man, the Mithril is going to save Frodo, and Sting is going to save Frodo and the whole quest. Oh man, this is one of the best parts. This is also kind of Bilbo passing down, I don't want to say the mantle, but the the role of hero completely and finally.
Yeah, I think he's saying like this is you are now. I was in this role. I was in the role of the quester And now I realize that this role is passed to you, and this is kind of almost like a formal passing on of those responsibilities.
But it's interesting that he wants it to be done secretly.
Yeah, they're wearing the armor. What is the reasoning behind Bilbo saying, like, don't advertise that you're wearing this? I think maybe.
Well, the thing is, I think it's that he's trying to protect Frodo, because if everyone knows about this thing, they'll just take it off, or they'll know where to stab in order to kill him. Whereas if they don't,
which also then suggests he's not so sure. Could be. I hadn't thought about it quite this way until just this moment as we've talked about it, but could be a scenario where Bilbo is basically predicting, let's say, Boromir's temptation and saying, you're carrying the ring. You've got a bunch of folks around you who know that you're doing that. Perhaps one of them might attempt to kill you. And if they do, it'd be nice if you had something on that they didn't know that you had to keep you alive. Anyway, maybe.
Yeah.
It's worth more than the whole Shire. Exactly, Eric.
Yeah, there is that as well. But I think it's also that we have to bear in mind Bilbo has fought in a battle. So part of one important thing in battle is the element of surprise. And wouldn't the enemy be surprised when he tries to run Frodo through, only to find him still intact and standing, and maybe even the sword shattering?
Oh,
so
for sure.
It might be. It might also be that there could be many layered reasons.
Because, for example, the hobbits are very humble folk.
Mm-hmm.
They don't like grand gestures.
Well, they do. They do like some grand gestures, especially at birthday parties.
But something grandiose, like because Bilbo is a humble man, but he's all
At times,
but he was a protector of the dwarves.
Fair.
And being the burglar, he's not supposed to be the guy that is everyone pays attention to.
So stop. Why are you roasting the dwarven company? Like, why are you insulting them and criticizing them? I'm joking.
It's a great point that, like, if, let's say, Frodo wore the mithril shirt that is worth the entire Shire, very publicly, it is kind of I'm a big deal. Check out this priceless artifact that I'm wearing as I walk around, the wilds. It would advertise this guy, must have something about him that is that we would want. I don't know. It really could put a target on his back, as opposed to wearing it underneath something, and so nobody knows it, but you're still using the protection of it.
Now, I think Frodo here is more trying to refuse a gift out of modesty and because he's feeling overwhelmed by Bilbo's generosity and compassion.
I hear that.
Though it might be that it just doesn't suit his taste in fashion because it's not rad enough. I don't know. Maybe he's finding Bilbo's taste in fashion a little boomerish for him. I had to crack this joke. I don't mean anything by it.
I prefer to wear the 250-pound plate mail armor that will certainly not fit me. And
I'm more a traditional guy than your little ring mail. I'll wear the plate mail, thank you. My grandfather would have worn the plate mail, not the ring mail. I can read this subject.
Yeah, and
it has the word ring in it. That's probably a bad idea in this context.
Yeah.
There's something else that here it is I'd like to bring attention to. For example, Aragorn renamed the sword.
Yeah.
And it's something grand and of importance.
Sure.
But Bilbo's sword is something far more simple, called Sting.
Yeah, and it's not renamed.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's because Frodo doesn't feel worthy of it. And then Aragorn is the heir of Elendil, Isildur, and whatnot, so he kind of has an obligation to rename it. He has to proclaim the new era of Arnor and Gondor, so a grand gesture is expected.
Exactly.
He has to be grander than everyone else. But now the thing is, there's the song which I'm going to push on Matt to recite.
All right.
I recited the last one.
Okay. Sorry, I'm responding to Robert here. He's talking about how Gimli wears his rather, sturdy armor quite easily. Okay. So, yes, we get this poem. It's a song. I'm not going to sing it. I'm going to recite it like a poem that Bilbo recites. Let's see. I'll tell you the context. It's like, I'll do my best to finish my book before you return. I should like to write the second book if I am spared. He broke off, turned to the window, singing softly. So he's saying goodbye, and this is somewhat of a goodbye lament in some ways. I sit beside the fire and think of all that I have seen, of meadow flowers and butterflies and summers that have been, of yellow leaves and gossamer in autumns that there were, with morning mist and silver sun and wind upon my hair. I sit beside the fire and think of how the world will be when winter comes without a spring that I shall ever see. For still there are so many things that I have never seen. In every wood and every spring, there is a different green. I sit beside the fire and think of people long ago, people who will see a world that I shall never know. But all the while, I sit and think of times there were before. I listen for returning feet and voices at the door.
It's a lonely song.
It is. He's talking about sitting by the fire. The world's passing by around him. Seasons are passing. People are coming and going. In this case, Frodo is leaving. But that sense of like, the world, how's the world going to be? I get the sense of after I'm gone is what he's saying. There's a what will all this look like years from now after my time has passed? And so it's it feels sad for sure.
He's thinking of his own mortality and of death because he knows what will happen to him once the ring is destroyed. But
and we know, since he's given up the ring, he has started to age already.
Yeah, and there's also the fact that the ring still has a hold over him, and it's departing from him, so his mood is going to be a little dour. It's a very interesting song, and he's presaging his own end, but he's also, like I said, I have the thinking that the ring still draws him in on some level, and he's trying to resist it, and it's hard on him. And thus, he's also having to send basically his kids out into a war zone. So that's not fun for him either. But like you said, he's predicting his own, what will happen after him.
Well, and I guess we get a couple of chapters from now, maybe it's even just right in the next page, but we get the effect, that Bill, the pony, is going to be part of the expedition. And I think it's Sam
the
reflects
10th Walker.
Yeah, the 10th. But that Bill is the only one that seems not depressed, the only one that seems happy to be going. So maybe this feeling on the edge of this journey is making everyone feel a bit contemplative, a bit,
on edge.
We get Aragorn is certainly not psyched about it either. I think partially we'll get to there, but I think he's leaving Arwen for one thing. She's here right now, and he's about to step away, and maybe forever. Anyway, so everybody's feeling a bit down.
And you have, of course, you have Boromir, who proceeds to act like a doofus.
This is pretty fun, actually. I kind of like this scene. It does say something about Boromir being kind of bull in a china shop, but it is also funny how he basically annoys the hell out of the elves. So, so he blows his horn. He's like, look, I always, at the start of any journey, I blow the horn to announce that I'm leaving. And so it says, what does it say? Putting it to his lips, he blew a blast, and the echoes leapt from rock to rock. And all that heard that voice in Rivendell sprang to their feet. And then Elrond says, slow should you be to wind that horn again, Boromir, until you stand once more on the borders of your land, the dire need is on you. And then Boromir responds with, maybe, but I will not go forth as a thief in the night. So he basically, he alarms everybody in earshot. And Elrond's like, please don't play that again. And Boromir's like,
but there is also
do what I like.
There is also another element here thematically that's at odds here. And this is where I'll critique Elrond a little. You have here the idea of the trickster versus the warrior hero. That is to say, Boromir does things the honorable way, and the right way.
He's not going to go as a thief in the night. He doesn't like the idea of sneaking.
And this is the sort of thing that kind of comes up in the Chanson de Roland, where Roland is very much against trickery, deception, and taking bribes and whatnot. So he likes to blast his war horn. He's loud. But ultimately, he's a good person. He's signaling, I'm not going to be bending my loyalties to Charlemagne, and I'm not going to bend on matters of honor and justice and righteousness and of God. But here's the thing. Elrond is proposing subtlety, discretion, and whatnot. And this is where there's a thematic duel between the two. And it might sound weird, but while I did say it was a stupid thing to do, it's also, to an extent, I kind of think Boromir has the right of it. Because if you're going to undertake this quest, you ought to do it the right way and whatnot. So thematically, I'm on Boromir's side, but strategically, I'm with Elrond.
Well, and if there was ever a time to blow the horn, it would be now, while you're safely in Rivendell. Who cares if you do it there? It's when you're trying to be, as Eric mentions in the comments, it's a stealth mission, Boromir. But also, this is obviously setting up. This is reminding us about Boromir, the horn. The horn is obviously very important. The horn of Boromir is incredibly important as we go along. And so we've established he's got a horn. He likes to play it, and it's very loud. And that will come into play, obviously, later.
I love this.
Yeah.
All right. Anyone else packing musical instruments? Hand them over before you leave. Yeah. That's
Which I told you a couple of months ago when I said I went to go see the Lord of the Rings musical. One of the things that was so annoying about it, it sounds maybe good on paper, but it was a terrible in execution. The actors playing the Fellowship all had musical instruments that they played on stage. And they weren't like a harmonica or something, whatever. It was like, hey, I've got a bass. I've got a, I don't know, they had giant, like a saxophone, whatever. It was crazy instrumentation. But the idea was they weren't just playing the instruments in the background. They were walking through Moria, the characters carrying these instruments. Like, why would you take a stand-up bass into Moria? Come on now. Anyway, so that
Matt,
that was.
It's not. Why would you carry it down there? Why wouldn't you?
I mean, who was the one that carried the grand piano?
Yeah, exactly. they didn't have an organ, but might as well. Here's my harpsichord.
Yeah.
But look, the orcs. They're just misunderstood, and they need music. I think it'll really help them. So we brought our orchestra with us. Give them a show.
And then we get this is going to be a funny little nod to 90s Batman movies. We get the arming scene where everybody starts arming themselves. I'm joking, actually. Gimli is going to wear a short shirt of steel rings and a broad-bladed axe. Legolas has his bow and quiver, and A knife. Oh my gosh, he's bringing a knife. He should bring a sword. What's wrong with him? Um,
The things you could do with that knife.
but come on, he's also Will Turner. He's skilled with a sword. He's
Oh.
fought pirates and
He
dreadlords.
He also knows how to throw war axes.
Yes, true. Now, I will acknowledge with a bow and arrow, he has taken on Achilles, but still, the sword and the axe, those things are useful. You should bring those too. I will never not criticize Legolas for all that.
And a tuba. Yes.
But the hobbits are going to be bringing swords, swords for them. It's probably just a butter knife for everyone else. But,
Right.
I have to crack that joke. Now, of course, Gandalf has his staff and Glamdring, and Tolkien takes the opportunity to remind us of one detail from The Hobbit about Orcus laying on Thorin's breast under the lonely mountain. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And Boromir has his long sword and a shield and his war horn, and of course Aragorn has Anduril, but no shield or anything. So he's going to be in a probably less stellar position because shields are useful. But at least he's bringing the sword. Bill the pony is bringing nothing. Fool. He out to bring a sword, a shield, and maybe a slingshot.
He's bringing 4 hooves. It's like, welcome to the gun show. Pop, 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 pop.
But like Frediger, he doesn't need a sword.
Yes. And Conan is bringing a sword, a shield, and an axe. And maybe that bow and arrows he tried to use to kill Zaltatun. Now, I couldn't resist a joke about Conan. But, okay, so they're now setting out for reals this time. And on page 282 of the edition I have, now they cross the ford of Bruinen and end up in the area that men call Holland. Holland, not Holland. Or Eregion, as it was called.
Yeah. I got some stuff on this one.
Go ahead.
Okay, so you're right. This is that artwork there, and then the next slide is a depiction of Eregion in happier times.
Lovely image.
So, because this is their one kind of foray into Eregion, I thought this would be a good time for this particular little bit of side lore for everybody. I did a video on this a few years back, but years go by. Who knows things? So I'll do a quick summary of what is the real world inspiration potentially for Celebrimbor, Moria, and maybe even some of the other significant lore. This event occurred in Tolkien's life that, boy, if it's not inspirational for him for this area and this bit of lore, it's awfully coincidental. So, 1928, Tolkien is a professor of Anglo-Saxon. He's still 8 years away from publishing The Hobbit. So he's still really early on. He was working on The Fall of Gondolin when he was in World War I. So he's already got obviously a lot of ideas on paper, but he hasn't actually published The Hobbit yet.
He's already got a mythology and a history.
Right. Now, he's called on to investigate the background of an excavated temple. That's actually the next slide. I have a picture of the temple ruins that he ended up being called in about. So
I am so jealous.
So there's this excavated temple complex in Gloucester. The area is known as Dwarf's Hill, and back in ancient times, it was a Roman iron mine originally. And there are still abandoned mining tunnels throughout the area. But at some point in the 4th century, the mine was closed Maybe they ran out of iron. I don't know. And they built a temple on the site. And it's a Roman temple to a Celtic deity. Very interesting. And that Celtic deity was named Nodens. It's a name that's rarely seen in Celtic mythology. So Tolkien's brought in to figure out who this deity is. Tolkien did the research, and he wrote a paper on his findings entitled The Name Nodens. One of the temple's inscriptions invoking the name Nodens was on this is actually what it's called, a curse tablet. And by the way, if you find a curse tablet in an ancient ruins of a temple, just let it be. Just leave it. Don't pick up the curse tablet. They picked up the curse tablet. And so basically, too late. So back in the 4th century, people could come to this temple of Nodens and record a curse that would then be stored in the temple for a fee. And this particular curse reads, "For the god Nodens, Silvianus has lost a ring and has donated 1/2 its worth to Nodens. Among those named Senecianus, permit no good health until it is returned to the temple of Nodens." So, a guy named Senecianus somehow, either he robbed it or he stole, maybe he won it in a card game, somehow ended up with Silvianus's ring. Silvianus paid half the ring's value to this temple of Nodens in order to curse Seneciacus with a plague, essentially, until he returned the ring to the temple, which I assume would then end the curse. In his research, Tolkien equated Nodens with the Celtic god Nuada, first king of the Tuatha De Danann. Very similar sounding names, Nodens, Nuada, similar word structure. And in a cool coincidence, that ring that this cursed tablet was about was actually found about 80 miles away in Silchester, and it's now in a museum. It's a gold signet ring with a depiction of Venus. And apparently after Senecanius, I'm saying his name wrong. Anyway, Senecanius acquired, however he did, the ring. He had it inscribed with, "Senecianus, may you live in God." So Tolkien has investigated a cursed ring involving the mythological figure Nuada. Nuada is commonly known as Nuada of the Silver Hand. Celebrimbor is the Elvish word for silver hand. The site of the temple is on Dwarf's Hill, which is an abandoned mine with lots of abandoned tunnels. Could be an analog for Moria. Extra fun fact, the only way to remove that curse, apparently, is to bring the ring back to where the curse was made. Kind of an a la Mount Doom scenario. Anyway, so there's a lot going on there that I feel like somehow some of those experiences were inspirational in creating the myth of Eregion, its connection to Moria, Celebrimbor's storyline. Anyway, so there you go. There's your little fun lore factoid about Eregion and company. Nodens.
All right. That was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool.
Yeah, it is really cool.
I'd like a job like that, right? Wouldn't you like a gig where somebody's like, "Look, I've got this cursed tablet that talks about a ring. I don't know. Can you read it for me and interpret which god this might be to?" I'm like, "Oh, okay. Yes, sure I have that ability." Anyway, so
I'm already back in school for philology. No need to put pressure on me, Matt. I'm working on it. Give me a year.
Okay, all right. I'm going to find some cursed tablets to have you interpret. Okay,
but they'll have to be in Latin or French or something when the time comes.
So these were in Latin. Perfect.
Okay, good. I'll have to learn Latin then. I don't know it yet. It's part of the course curriculum. That I'm hoping to go for Gallic. because I've got an interest in that. But anyways,
yeah, great point, Joe. Never thought about it before. The Fellowship's walking right past the birthplace of the Rings of Power. Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, at least
how very ominous.
If obviously not the ring itself, but the ring that Gandalf is wearing, the ring that Elrond had, that stuff was all crafted right on there's really almost no architecture to speak of that they kind of walk through this area, and like it's
been destroyed.
They don't spend a lot of time in it.
This offers us a moment where Tolkien is commenting on the passage of time, and that this is a theme I've seen also in a lot of Japanese literature and stories, in that time will level and smash, the tallest mountains to dust, as it's once been said, and basically level the field. Castles will be reduced, monuments might fall, and the thing is, you cannot fight time. And that is something that is very, very bleak to think about, and yet it's a fact. There's something about how all are mortal within this world, in a way. Even the mountains and the fields and the glens and the valleys and the rivers are mortal in a way.
Well, you mentioned that. One of the things in the video that I did about that Celebrimbor inspiration, I also noted in a letter that Tolkien wrote to his son during World War II, he talked about, because I guess Christopher really found a lot of inspiration in Celebrimbor's character, Celebrimbor and Eregion in particular. And so Tolkien was theorizing that the reason his son appreciated it as much is that like Tolkien, his son really valued the idea of the vanished past. So like in terms of like, even in real world terms, this god Nodens, no one knows who Nodens is. You have to get a specialist to come in and be like, okay, well, I'm pretty sure that compares with their god. So it's like this lost knowledge. It's the same way as Eregion. Eregion in its day had everything. It was like the Library of Alexandria, and it's gone. Yeah. Just walking through a forest now.
Another reason why Christopher liked that sort of stuff is because he was basically in the same field. Well, he was in the same field as his dad. And what people often forget is he was one of the Inklings. So I'll just quickly comment on one thing. On page 283 of the large hardbook edition, hardcover edition I have, Gimli mentions that I need no map in reference to the local area. He doesn't need a map. He knows it. But he also says something very interesting. There is a land where our fathers worked of old, and we have wrought the image of those mountains into many works of metal and of stone, and to many songs and tales. They stand tall in our dreams. Baraz, Zirak, Shathur. I'll actually comment on one thing. Baraz is something that I did sneak into one of my own novels. Well, not one, but many. Baraz is the term I use for my moblins, which are pigmen, which you can find in The Legend of Zelda. So I borrowed that and put that into my mythos, but I call them Baraz, which is a kind of pig. So it's also a nice little nod to Tolkien's page 283 here, with a nod to Gimli, who also served as the inspiration for a major character in my Caladbolg novel. Baronk, who, like Gimli, is quite the chivalric character. So just wanted to...
Is this where Gimli is mentioning he's talking about the history of the mountains? Yeah?
Yeah.
Because one thing that he mentions in particular is he calls Caradhras cruel Caradhras. I think that's important for what comes later. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he also comments on Khazad-dûm in his talk, the Darodelf, which Dwaro, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, is a term for dwarves in the plural sense. But this is called the Black Pit, Moria in the Elvish tongue, and he makes reference to Barazinbar, the Red Horn gates, Cruel Karathas, and beyond him. And he refers to the mountains as him.
Yep.
Are Silvertine and Cloudyhead, Klebdil, the white, and Fanuithol, the gray, and Ziragsigil, and Budu Shathur. I'll just make one other comment here. And here the mountains are called him. This is the sort of thing the French tend to do and call like nations her, elle, or she. Like la douce France éternelle. France is often addressed as though it were a person and female. Even in Grande-Bretagne, I've noticed a lot of French Canadians tend to also refer to Grande-Bretagne as a old marm or an old granny or old mom to Canada and whatnot. So this sort of, assigning a gender to something like a mountain or a land or something is something very, very much part of the French culture and linguistic trends. So, yeah, dwell in the dictionary, it means excavation. Yes, indeed. The way Gimli talks about them makes me think that some of Morgoth's malice still affects the peaks. Yeah, I get the same feeling.
Yep. Eric, good comment there. Yeah, and I do feel like we get this sense of that these mountains have that they are spirits of their own. We've already seen Old Man Willow. It's a thing of nature that is endowed with a spirit, and in that case, a malevolent spirit.
And there's something of this. Now, I'll actually freely say this is not very Anglo-Saxon, in my opinion. This is more Celtic influence over Tolkien. What I mean is like to assign a spirit to, or a kind of energy or will to, like a mountain, a forest, a tree, and whatnot. I've just been noticing that in a lot of Celtic literature and theological and philosophical thought and linguistics. There's a lot of emphasis on nature having its own will and whatnot. It's one of the major differences between the Anglo-Saxons of England in the medieval period and the Celts and the Frank, I should also add, because England was always surrounded by a bunch of Celtic nations. France on the mainland, Scotland to the north, Ireland to the west, and I guess kind of Wales is kind of a country. I say kind of because it was always just
kind of
almost an extension. Well, it's almost just an extension of England. But
I got you. They would argue they're a country, I'm sure. But yes,
they're not. But it's cute that they think they are. But it's. But
since we're talking about
fled there.
Go for it, sir.
All I meant was the Bretons fled there, and that's the, they are a Celtic people, and their mountains, for example, features very heavily in their thought process and whatnot. And Tolkien makes reference to how much he really likes Wales and even Ireland, and he would make many trips to Ireland, even though he would complain about the land itself.
But he had Wales. You got Snowdonia. You've got these mountains that might have some kind of a resonance with him. Although I feel like it's more Switzerland. Really, that was the more inspiration for him.
Yes, Eric. Yeah. I throw a little shade at the Welsh because I have a lot of friends from England and a few, I think, from Wales, and quite a few a few proofreaders from Scotland and a few friends from Ireland. One of them is about to go through surgery, so I'm a little worried over him.
I would say one of my most miserable 2 hours, maybe of, I'm not going to say it my entire life, but certainly a memorably terrible 2 hours was spent in Wales. It was the coldest soccer game that I have ever had to play. It was in March. It was in Northern Wales, in Clwyd. We were playing the North Welsh national team. And of course, because it's football, soccer, you wear shorts. Even though it's in the 20s and there is it was hailing. It was a terrible, I couldn't open my mouth. My fingers couldn't close. And like we were playing in this terrible weather. We won the game. Damn it. But
that's good.
I just was like, please just get me out of this wind, out of this. I actually was chasing my warm-up suit around the field because the wind had blown it around the field. I was like, please come back. Anyway, it was terrible. So yes, cold days in Wales. Not great.
Oh, okay, so that was -6 degrees.
I just
right, great point. Fahrenheit, Celsius, correct. Yeah.
Okay, but -6, that's a nice warm day.
Nice warm day.
Yeah. So
wait, now that I live in Chicago, that temperature isn't terrible, but I still wouldn't go out in shorts.
No, you're not supposed to.
It's like, and especially depending on the wind.
And you also
that's the deciding factor.
And you got to consider rain with the British Isles.
Oh, yeah.
It was anyway. Just to say, it was like, woo, okay, Wales, you came to play on this one, guy. Woo.
Oh, the Welsh will put a curse on me. Yes, but I'm blessed because I'm French, so it balances out.
Balances out, and some English.
Your Welsh curse bounces off. Okay, well, while we're talking about Carithus, and it has his personality, and maybe Carithus the Cruel. And perhaps because Morgoth raised these mountains, that there's still like a taint of Morgoth is perhaps corrupting these spirits. We have what I consider to be a really major difference between the books and Jackson's movies. In Jackson's movies, he took the text and he could make a case for what he did, but he basically made it as Saruman did it. Saruman saw they were trying to cross Carithus and those sent spells and made the weather bad. That is not. It's not strongly applied. I'll put it that way. Could you make the case? You can make the case, but it's a bad case. It's not really the case in the books that Saruman did this and made the Red Horn impassable. Because we do have the whole Sauron's arm has grown long. They do mention that. That line is in this chapter. And so perhaps you're thinking, but still, even though Sauron doing it doesn't really ring true. I think perhaps if you were to say that Sauron had some influence, it could be much like the Witch King under Sauron was raising the wraiths in the Barrow Downs. You're going to have the Watcher in the Water. You're going to have the Balrog. You have creatures of old, ancient beings, maybe of ill intent, are being roused.
Sauron is cursing them. It's like Sauron's cursing the Welsh curse.
Very good. Welsh, exactly. The curse. He insulted their heritage, and so you do get these lines that say like they heard eerie noises in the darkness around them. May have been a trick of the wind in the cracks and gullies of the rock wall, but the sounds were those of shrill cries and wild howls of laughter. There are fell voices on the air. So it's definitely insinuating that there is a spirit that is antagonistic towards them. But I think that spirit, based on what we just saw with Gimli's description of Carithus the Cruel, it's basically saying the mountain is the thing that's responsible, not some outside force a la Saruman or Sauron. That's my case.
Right. Well, Sauron, I think it would have made a great scene for us to see his shadow extending a hand over the Palantiri and whatnot. But that's just me being biased towards Sauron as the main villain, rather than a giant eyeball that does nothing. But we also get the terms, and I really like this, mirror The river Silverlode, because the name Motherlode was already taken. I'm joking. And the comment that dark is the water of Keled Zaram, and cold are the springs of Kibil Nala, which we're getting a lot of dwarvish here.
Well, he mentions
which I will.
Azanul Bazaar, which we're not even going to get really anything about that, I don't think, much at all. But that's talking about, obviously, the war between dwarves and orcs at the gates, the eastern gate of Moria. That's a big deal. But we get this name drop, and like, whoop, that's all you're going to get. You just have to know there's a story behind it.
And of course, then the morning after, we get Aragorn, who's pretty silent and restless, and he's asked by Mary, of all people, who takes note of this. Once again, it has to be pointed out in the book, Mary's actually got a brain, and he's fairly perceptive and close to Strider. And he asks, "Do you miss the east wind?" And Aragorn tells him, "No, indeed, but I miss something. I've been in the country of Holland in many seasons. No folk dwell here now, but many other creatures live here at all times, especially birds. Yet now, all things but you are silent. I can feel it. There is no sound for miles about us, and your voices seem to make the ground echo. I do not understand it." And Gandalf prods him on this, and Aragorn admits that he has a sense of watchfulness and fear that he's never felt in that area or been conscious of in that area before then. And this is where, we get to observe that there's danger on the horizon. And of course, we also get a show of character development on Sam's part, because before he didn't trust or like Aragorn, and now Sam is consulting with him on things he observes and whatnot.
There's a shot, slide of our heroes camping. I think it's slide 10, FYI. Just went up. That's Celebrimbor, but
Ooh.
Just hanging out.
Yep. Shooting the breeze.
Exactly.
And of course,
Bill the pony looks tiny in that picture, by the way. It's Bill the miniature horse.
Oh my gosh, he is tiny.
I think it's a distance, depth perception issue there, but like Bill the puppy.
Yeah, you must be the strongest mule
that size ever.
Great point, Joe. By the way, interesting. Legolas is hearing a voice coming from the stones. Yeah, he's actually able to hear this the spirit of the stones through the earth. Maybe more of that. There are these spirits. This is a spirit-heavy region.
Yeah,
perhaps.
Deep they delved us, fair they wrought us, high they builded us, but they are gone. They are gone. They sought the havens a long ago. Oof, that's sorrowful. It's like the very stones and land is in mourning and in grief at remembered glory in ages past. I'm not going to lie, it's very depressing about it. And it's interesting that the elves...
vanishing past.
It's interesting that the elves have such a strong connection to the land like that, and that Legolas is able to translate for the stones in the land in this manner. I really do love this. And of course, we get one of our first real references to the best part of the Third Age, Rohan. The gap of Rohan. Now, we've gotten a great reference during the Council of Elrond, but we got another reference right here. And it has to be mentioned that Rohan wasn't exactly originally planned, but it was inserted later. And this is one of the most fascinating things, because Tolkien had to double back and really cement them in the lore and whatnot. And I would argue the lore of the Rohirrim is the best part of the Third Age. And of course, Theoden was great in the movie. And we get
You get the Krebine attack. Attack. Does Krebine fly overhead?
Yeah, and which that sort of detail is wonderful. And then we end up having, the winter storm that hits, which is a pretty exciting part. I think we already discussed that in quite a bit of detail. But what's really, now where is it?
One thing, one little bit that happens right before we get to Carithros.
Oh, there it is.
It's in the morning, so it was the cold, chill hour before the first stir of dawn. The moon was low. Frodo looked up at the sky. Suddenly he saw or felt a shadow pass over the high stars, as if for a moment they faded and then flashed out again. He shivered. "Did you see anything pass over?" he whispered to Gandalf, who was just ahead. "No, but I felt it, whatever it was," he answered. "It may be nothing, only a wisp of thin cloud." "It was moving fast then," muttered Aragorn, "and not with the wind." I think this, now obviously Jackson took that quote to be like the Krebine, the cloud of Krebine. I think that is our first hint at the winged beasts, right? The fell beasts.
Yeah.
The Nazgul are back, better than ever. Now they're not going to be riding around on horses anymore. So I think that's what we've got is a Nazgul flying overhead.
Maybe. I also wonder if it's maybe a spirit or a shade of the mountain that is connected to the winter storm that comes.
Okay. A little like presaging again, the idea of like these spirits are all in play around here. That's good call.
Yeah. And kind of taking a bit of inspiration from the Yuki-onna winter spirits that tend to trap men and kill them by freezing them to death over in Japan in some stories.
Nice, good call.
But I don't imagine it being female, but I imagine Sauron would have such spirits at his disposal, and would be able to communicate with them through the Palantiri. So he wouldn't be expending any effort on his part, and sending one of his evil spirits that could.
Maybe I feel like it would be a spirit that's more endemic to this particular region, though. Just like Carithros, for instance. But I hear you.
Yeah, precisely. And one thing I really like, let me try to find it, is that Frodo ends up falling into a bit of snow, and it's Boromir who pulls him up, and who kind of worries and frets and warns Gandalf, "This will be the death of the halflings, Gandalf." And
useless to sit here until the snow goes over our heads. We must do something to save ourselves. Yeah. And that's where we get the Miravor, which is that it's basically like Elvish brandy, essentially. Like, woof, it brings you vigor in these moments.
Yeah, I really like that we do get a lot of people just think of Boromir as the guy who cracks within a minute and tries to grab the ring, but what a lot of people forget is that Boromir is good. Like he's a good man. The reason
he is a tragic hero. We had this chat a few months back, but yeah, he's definitely not a villain. He is a tragic hero. I would wager.
He's not a Denethor. He's his own man, and he's someone who would have made a fine steward of Gondor. But the thing is, he's genuinely worried. He's the one who kind of frets about the halflings almost more than anyone, and he's only just met them. As we French would say, il a grand cœur, lui, which means he has a big heart, him. It's an old French proverb, il a grand cœur, lui. It means he's, the most upright man. He's got a big heart, him. And of course, Gandalf passes around brandy. You know, like let's get them drunk so they don't notice how bad it is. I'm joking. Yeah, Boromir basically suggests the snowplow approach, and he really does save the group there. Like they could not have made it as far as they did without him, and it's just, yeah, I really, really do like Boromir. And I must confess, as a kid, I really liked him because Sean Bean and all. Sean Bean's incredibly charismatic and
It's Sean Bean.
it's just a shame that he's not been cast. Like, I'm not talking Lord of the Rings here. He's not been cast in a lead role in a fantasy film or something.
And he was made for that.
Yeah, he was. Sad to say, like he must have one of the worst agents in the world, so that he didn't properly get cast. Because he's someone who should be given a lead position. Well, if need be, I'll just write the stories and make sure they get made into movies and cast them.
I do like what we get here now. Next, fairly quickly in here, is Legolas basically showing off in the snow. So it's like Legolas watched them for a while with a smile upon his lips. Then he turned to the others. The strongest must seek a way, you say? But I say, let a plowman plow, but choose an otter for swimming, and for running light over grass and leaf or over snow, an elf. And with that, he sprang forth nimbly, and then Frodo noticed, as if for the first time, though he had long known it, that the elf had no boots, but wore only light shoes, as he always did, and his feet made little imprint in the snow. This sounds a lot like me playing soccer in Cluid. I just had little boots. Okay, anyway. Farewell, he said to Gandalf. I go to find the sun. Then swift as a runner over firm sand, he shot away, and quickly overtaking the toiling men with a wave of his hand, he passed. He's
basically just waving at them.
Ran into the distance and vanished around the rocky turn. So yeah, he literally is just like, idiots. Yeah, he nanny boo boos them. Yes.
Yeah. He's still carrying that spirit of whimsy that you have in Rivendell with him. Man, I forgot how funny and fun Legolas was. I will acknowledge, I do think Orlando Bloom did a great job capturing that to an extent. Sean Bean was a great Boromir. Jackson had to accelerate his fall due to the constraints, making him seem more weak-willed or less honorable than he's in the book. Yeah, but Sean Bean was miscast as Boromir.
Well, he's still though, even with
he should have been Aragorn. He should have been. He
does have that really cool heroic death moment. They still you get that redemptive quality in the movies as well.
Yeah, you do. But
Sean Bean could have done every role.
Yeah.
As I say, he's so quotable. I mentioned it before, but my buddy Theron and we quote, kind of nerd quotes from movies and books, and so many of our quotes are from Boromir, from Sean Bean's Boromir, and he's only in essentially one movie with a couple extra scenes thrown in. So, like his on-screen time per quotable references is huge. It is huge.
Actually, I'll correct Eric and say, as a longtime, lifelong Sean Bean fan, it's not exactly what he does.
He does quite a few times. There are quite a few.
Yeah, no, but my
point
is
movies where
he shows up in a movie or
Sean Bean's gonna die, but
he'll either die or everyone else will die, and he'll be the only survivor. I've seen a few movies and shows where he's the only man standing afterwards, and it's always hilarious because either the only reason they kill him in the shows where he dies is so they can live. It's kill or be killed, like they don't have a choice.
What's that? I think I may have even referenced this. It's been a while. We've been doing this for a little while now, but I think I maybe mentioned this before. There's that movie. I think it's called The Black Death. Could be wrong. It's about the plague.
It is,
and
or something like that.
His character is like a knight essentially, and he gets the like the big reveal. Spoilers for those of you who haven't seen The Black Death. Anyway, his big reveal is like he's dying of the plague. We didn't know it, and then at the end he opens his shirt and he reveals to everybody that he's killed them all because he has the plague and now he's infected them all. All his enemies die from the plague. So it was just like, oh, Sean Bean dies again, but he takes his enemies with him. per the plague. Anyway,
Per Sean Bean.
per Sean Bean, exactly.
Um,
But yeah, anyway, that is a really fun little
But I
bit
do-
there where Legolas is literally having a good time with this, even though they're like, "Oh my God, we're in real trouble here." He's like, "Yeah, anyway, watch this." Ha ha
but yeah,
ha.
okay, I will soften and say, yeah, I know where Eric's coming from, but actually, The Martian, there's a movie. Yeah,
Oh yeah, good point.
yeah, that was a great meta moment. My only thing is, I wish Sean Bean had a larger role. He should be cast in every role.
Okay, I got you,
Gandalf, Rosie, Eowyn, Theoden, just cast him in every role.
As played by Sean Bean. Sean Bean, I got you. The man of many faces.
Yeah, like in Troy and Frankenstein Chronicles, he's, I think, the last man standing. But in Black Plague, he takes everyone with him. And then you've got
Games,
Lord of the Rings.
he goes up. But yeah. There's quite a few. Obviously, Game of Thrones. Spoiler alert.
Yeah. He was the best part, and the show went down and tanked after he left. They should have kept him on.
Sure.
Just contradict the books. I'm trolling at this point. I got to stop. But we also get Gandalf showing off his magic,
right?
Because he's got a spell now an Idreath Amen, which everyone knows what Amen means. So I wonder if it's also a prayer on top of a word of command.
Okay.
But of course, Gandalf is here. Jeez. The oldest, one of the oldest things one could say, and it's even engraved in the Hagia Sophia, I think. No, it's engraved in over in Constantinople. That because some Viking said I was here or something.
Oh, okay.
I think,
you told me about that.
Yeah, because
and of course, there's a beautiful linguistic term that Aragorn uses. The night is getting old. Sorry, I just thought that was worth mentioning. It's
well, this is an interesting part here. We get what I almost think of as an oddly pessimistic Aragorn, considering they've just started their journey. They've been out for 2 weeks. Yes, they've hit a stumbling block. The snows kept them from going over the mountain. But there's this conversation that Aragorn has with Gandalf. And so it's and Frodo's overhearing them. And this is after they've retreated. So it's Gandalf talking first. What do you think of your course now, Aragorn? Frodo overheard these words and understood that Gandalf and Aragorn were continuing some debate that had begun long before. He listened anxiously. I think no good of our course from beginning to end, as you know well, Gandalf, answered Aragorn. And perils known and unknown will grow as we go on, but we must go on. It is no good our delaying the passage of the mountains. Further south there are no passes, till one comes to the gap of Rohan. I do not trust that way, since your news of Saruman. But like that thing, I think no good of our course from beginning to end, as you know well, Gandalf. I mean, boy, that's a strong statement, right? It's almost like I didn't think we should do this in the first place. That's what that comes out as, right? I mean, it feels that way. I don't think he actually believes that strongly, but that verbiage, what do you take out of that verbiage?
What was the verbiage?
Where so Gandalf and Aragorn are talking. Gandalf asks him, "What do you think of our course now that the snows have pushed us back?" And Aragorn says, "I think no good of our course from beginning to end, as you well, Gandalf." So it almost suggests that Aragorn really isn't in favor of this plan from the beginning. I don't know. It's an interesting. I'm not sure.
I think that is the case, but it's also interesting that Gandalf is consulting with Aragorn, wanting his input, his opinion.
I think as a ranger, right? Maybe like, okay, we'll get the lay of the land. But
also, it's not an overt way of doing it, but I think that there's an element of the hint of Gandalf almost by seeking out his opinion and whatnot, and the conversation, the way it goes, it struck me as something almost like reminiscent of an adult King Arthur with Merlin, and a kind of mentor and student thing. So Gandalf suspects, he's not going to be around for a portion of the quest, and that Aragorn's going to have to make his own calls, his own decisions, and step up, because Gandalf's currently the leader of the group, but this might sound weird, but he shouldn't be. It should be Aragorn who is leading, because Aragorn is the king. But that's where this kind of divine mentor, this mystic aid or guide, can't stay there for the whole quest because, other hero will not grow. And
Eric brings up a good point, that this could be a conversation left over from where Aragorn was Trotter. And the reason that's
I try not to think about Trotter.
A pretty cool notion is that we are going to see just such a passage in the next chapter that is certainly a artifact left over from the Trotter version of Aragorn. So maybe this is something like that as well. Good call.
Although it's a good thing Tolkien removed the Trotter, because that was the worst writing I ever saw in my entire life.
The character it doesn't seem as compelling a character. I'll put it that way. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, even the prose around it was like, ew, what is this trash? Burn it. It'll be more used that way. But Tolkien revised it and folded it and molded it into the Aragornish drafts, which it fits and works much better after a lot of revision and editing and mixing with the post-Trotter period. But like I said, I try not to think about Trotter. It's like thinking of receiving a stab wound. I try not to think about that sort of thing.
Well, we should also, I guess there is reason for Aragorn. We earlier in this chapter, we get this moment right before they set out where I think it's Frodo looks over and he sees Aragorn with his head in his hands, and is like, he's obviously very sad, and it says like Elrond was the only one who knew why, something like that. I took that as to mean that he was leaving Arwen in this moment, and maybe that's true, and maybe he's still feeling that moment. But it's useful to mention also, though, that the wedding, like Elrond, we learned this in the appendices. Elrond will only basically give his permission, the hand of Arwen to be wed, if only when Aragorn has united the North and South as king. In fact, I'll just read that passage real fast. This is from the appendices.
Yay.
When Elrond learned the choice of his daughter, so he learns his daughter is in love with Aragorn. He was silent, though his heart was grieved, and found the doom long feared none the easier to endure. But when Aragorn came again to Rivendell, he called him to him, and he said, "My son, years come when hope will fade, and beyond them little is clear to me. And now a shadow lies between us. Maybe it has been appointed so, that by my loss the kingship of men may be restored. Therefore, though I love you, I say to you, Arwen Undumiel shall not diminish her life's grace for less cause. She shall not be the bride of any man less than the king of both Gondor and Arnor. To me, then, even our victory can bring only sorrow and parting, but to you, hope of joy for a while. Alas, my son, I fear that to Arwen, the doom of men may seem hard at the ending." So there's a lot going on there, but basically it sets up this idea that Aragorn knows, like, so we had the sons of Elrond going to Galadriel, almost certainly to get permission from Galadriel for the wedding. We're going to have Galadriel give the Elfstone as a wedding gift to Aragorn. But all that means none of that can happen. The wedding can't happen until the war is successfully over and Aragorn has successfully become the king. So there's a lot that has to happen. A lot has to go right. And maybe part of Aragorn's misgivings in this moment, the reason he had his head in his hands and was like so despondent in a way, was like, here's where it starts. There's this happiness at the end of all this if I can pull this off, but good Lord, the amount of effort and luck and hardship that it stands between me and the end of this is huge. And so maybe there's part of that, the misgivings of like, okay, here we go, let's do this.
And there'd also be another thing you might have misgivings about. What is the nickname of sorts that Elrond has been addressing him with? My son. Elrond is very much a father to Aragorn.
For sure. And, yeah, he was his foster dad.
Yeah, which traditionally in classic Nordic and Germanic culture is as good as an actual biological father or adoptive father. So, and I explore this theme a lot in my Darkspire conspiracy novel, which is going to be coming out this summer. The thing is, Aragorn's bond with Elrond should not be understated. And it means inflicting a bit of a wound on Elrond, and also
right. He realizes that Arwen will have a finite life at that point.
And also be deprived of her father. And it kind of means hurting Elrond, which no son ever wants to disappoint or harm his father. And this is where, he has to because he's in love, and Elrond wants him to do it. But at the same time, it means, there's going to be pain and heartbreak. But, it's about time that 3,000-year-old daughter moves out of her dad's house. I'm joking. I have to reference that meme I saw on Instagram. He raised him. Elrond is his dad. Yeah, absolutely.
He says in that quote, "I love you." That's a declaration of love there. So
and that's another thing. He declares it and makes it very obvious that connection. There was a bond there, and back then we shouldn't take it under, like, even today, saying "I love you" to someone carries with it a lot of power. It's one of the most powerful phrases in any language you could ever utter. Now, like in Japanese, they've got different kinds of love that they could express. Like Greek, skida could be interpreted, for example, to be between partners, but also between like family and whatnot. Ashiteru is like the most profound love, and it's between soulmates, or ashimas and whatnot. So this is where, it's a language which is very useful for making these distinctions. And this is where I think with French, tone and the manner in which you say "j't'aime" ou "j't'adore" really, depends. Although "adore" is closer to "acheter," and "ma" is more like "ski" or "like" or "love." So I just wanted to get a bit into the linguistics there. But Elrond is very firmly saying, basically confessing a profound love that a father has for his son. And it's, I just find it a little tragic that, Elrond has to leave immediately after the marriage because he must, he's weary and he must journey west. Did Aragorn marry his stepsister? Kind of, his foster sister.
Yeah, which, and there's certainly if you go back far enough, there's a bit of connection there, Elrond, and anyway, but yeah.
Well, the thing with foster,
there's enough cousin of cousin of cousin of cousin in that it's not this was completely weird. But yeah, they grew up together. They were like in the same house, and
this was not an uncommon practice in Nordic houses where you'd foster someone in your house, and let's say when he grows up, you'd marry him to one of your daughters.
Except
they're
that
common.
she's like exponentially older than he is. But yes.
Oh yeah, but we're not supposed to comment on a lady's age. It's like okay, except if it's Galadriel, we can old shame her. But
Okay, fair enough.
okay. But
But
yeah,
just to say that there's this giant obstacle to their wedded bliss, which is, hey, first, just a small thing. It's almost like we mentioned Baron and Luthien. Hey, Baron, oh, you want to marry Luthien? Go get me a Silmaril out of Morgoth's crown. All right, I'll be right back. So here it's like, okay, you want to marry Arwen? Go defeat Sauron and unite Arnor and Gondor after thousands of years. All right, I'll be right back.
Yeah. And Joe points out the connections there and the repetition. Yeah, Tolkien was very good at that.
Point. Yeah, exactly. Baron is the Thingol. Exactly. Yep.
It's Liv Tyler who blames him. Actually, I do, because I never found her very pretty. I actually have seen girls in local neighborhood who were way prettier. No, I'm serious. I just never understood how people called her beautiful. It just strikes me as odd, especially when Diane Kruger was running around at the time. Just dye her hair black, and you have Helen of Troy. You crazy? Yes, I am. I'm French. Okay, I'm glad Eric took it in good stride. I'm just joking around.
Yep.
If you find her pretty, it's fine. I get it. Actually, one thing I will say about the casting, which was a good thing, her and Hugo Weaving do look like they could be father and daughter. So that's something I do have to give Jackson's casting director. There was some wisdom there in the casting. So kudos.
So we end the chapter with a kind of a fun bit where the birds return, right? So the Krebine return, and there's this great moment there where it was like, high above the lower foothills, dark dots were circling in the air. The birds again, said Aragorn, pointing down. And then Gandalf says, that cannot be helped now. Whether they are good or evil, or have nothing to do with us at all, we must go down at once. So he's just like, hell, screw it. I don't care. Fine. They see us. Okay. I'm done hiding from these things. We got to get off the mountain. We're goodbye. Okay. So yes, in the end, the Krebine, I guess, will ultimately see them as they turn their backs and come back down the mountain, which of course means the next chapter we'll be talking about, chapter 4, A Journey in the Dark. What could that mean? What could that mean, Joe? They're in Moria. I know your favorite part is Rohan. For me, it's Moria, baby. Bridge at Khazad-dûm. I'll do like a quick. Where I got the little box set of books, a little too early for me to appreciate. I was like 8, 9, something like that. My mom had read The Hobbit for me as a kid. I really enjoyed it. I tried to pick up the books. I got a little bored with the party tree. I don't know. It didn't resonate with me. I put it away. I'm age like 11 now, 11, 12. And my buddy in class turned out to be one of my best friends of all time. He's drawing this really cool picture. And it turned out he was drawing Gandalf and the Balrog at Khazad-dûm. And I was like, what are you drawing? He's like, oh, this is the Bridge of Khazad-dûm. What are you talking about? What do you mean? What is it? And so, like, immediately I was like, oh my God. I went and I pulled that chapter and I read that chapter like out of context, but it was like so hooked on it. I was like, oh my God, I got to go back and read and figure out how this all arrives to the bridge. And so that chapter was what plugged me into Lord of the Rings originally. So I'm really excited to get into the Moria section, and this is a special place in my heart. So I'm all for Moria, baby. We're doing this.
And now seems like the perfect time to announce that next time we'll be on your channel.
That's right. Journey in the Dark. A Journey in the Dorklords. There we go. Yeah. A Journey in the Dorklords.
Yep. So do remember to subscribe to the Dorklords.
That would be lovely. And likewise to the brothers Arda and the brothers Kryn. So what else can the people find on your brother's channels, good sirs?
Well, we've got our stack, where we do all sorts of essays and even web novels, which is pretty fun. That's the most exciting part. And we've got a new channel we're starting up where we'll be doing some audio series and radio dramas and whatnot of our works, which Matt's been invited to help on, which is going to be really, really cool. Well, I'm going to be posting that on every post on every one of our channels because it's freaking exciting. And but I also was thinking on, I don't know which channel to put this on, going back to doing our podcast about Conan. What if Conan was in Middle Earth, and just as the 10th Walker, and that was something which, you know, Dan and I have talked about before. We already did, I think, one episode on that. We got through the Council of Elrond with that idea. So now I was thinking, since maybe having it follow along, like after each of these streams, and where Dan and I will string along Conan and explore how it would affect the adventure for good and for ill.
Okay, fair enough. That's cool. I like that. I like that angle for sure.
Yeah.
On the Dorklords.
I was going to say, and it helps promote these streams.
Yeah, nice. On the Dorklords, I just finished, a very long research project, but I got it done. So it's First Age Villains, Broda and Lorgan.
Oh yeah, Broda.
So go check that out. I'm not sure what my next little deep dive will be, but I'm just kind of taking a deep side, like, okay, I finished that project. Okay, let me see what the next one might be. So anyway, but I'm pleased with it, pleased with the way it turned out. So check that out. On the non-Tolkien stuff. Oh, so I saw that you made a comment on it. I appreciate that. So
yeah, it was an awesome video. I gotta share it in Brothers Arda post. I gotta just post that in my section. It's just
nice.
It was an awesome. I gotta do that. It was such an awesome video. I love it.
It was a fun find for me. And anyway, so it's a cool little deep dive. Non-Tolkien wise, we're covering the sci-fi satirical show Murderbot at the moment. Probably going to be covering The Sandman, which is going to come out in July, and probably Strange New Worlds, stuff like that. So anyway, feel free to check out if you're into dorkly media content. Otherwise, I'm looking forward to Journey in the Dark next time, baby.
Yeah, and I'm gonna have to look at that Murderbots thing, so I could follow those of yours.
Sweet,
because I want to follow one other.
It's based on the Murderbot Diaries, is what it's called.
Oh, okay. Well, it's just I'm only following your Tolkien videos, and I'm like, I want to follow more.
Makes sense.
I'll have to watch the series so I can actually then watch every single one of your videos. Like watch, episode 1, then your video, then episode 2, then your video, and do that.
Awesome. Oh, and Eric has mentioned he's halfway through the video. Awesome. Glad to hear that.
Oh
Eric.
my gosh, it's wonderful.
So enjoy, and I guess thanks to everybody out there for hanging with us, and many thanks to you guys, you brothers. You guys are awesome up there in Canada.
Thank you, and almost as awesome as you are in Chicago.
We can be awesome together. We'll see everybody next time. Come on back. We'll throw out some advertising for it when we find the right date and everything. But come on back next time. Yep. And goodbye, everybody.
Namarie.
Namarie.